City Lights is Charlie Chaplin's 1931 masterpiece, a defiant movie against the talkies, which he thought were just going to last about 2 or 3 years. You were kind of wrong, Charlie. But yeah, it's an incredible film. We're going to talk about it. I believe it's Shane's first Charlie Chaplin film. No, that's not true.
No, second Charlie
Yeah,
Chaplin
yeah.
film.
It's Shane's second Charlie Chaplin film on the Golden Hour Film Podcast. Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Yes, I am very much feeling like Michael Jordan today. It is my flu game, but yeah, times are busy, so we just got to record. It is City Lights, our first time covering Charlie Chaplin on the podcast, and I'm looking forward. I checked just there. I've seen 7 Chaplin films, and this is definitely top three for me. It's your second, yeah.
Second, yeah, I've seen The Kid, and like he's one of those directors and just like kind of icons of cinema anyway that I wanted to get into for a long time. Kind of like there's so many that it's hard to know where to start. And it's not just like you know what I mean. But like I said, the whole point of doing this podcast for me is kind of giving me an excuse, giving me a reason to actually get into them. I can't have not any excuses then. So yeah, no,
Yeah.
I love City Lights, and this is like I said, the whole point of doing the podcast for me is to seek out stuff like this that I haven't seen before.
Yeah, so I have seen, for context, I've seen pretty much his biggest ones. The biggest one that I haven't seen yet that I really want to see is Limelight, which is basically like the film. It's like his last hurrah where he makes a film about a fading star. Like literally, it's quite autobiographical. What? It's quite autobiographical.
That's the one.
And besides that, I have seen Modern Times, which I think is my favorite of his films, and I've also seen The Great Dictator, and that would make up my top three, including this. Chaplin wrote this, directed it, starred in it, even composed it
Compose, yeah.
because
The
he
music's
he
so good.
admitted himself he admitted himself that he was obviously trying to prove a point. His previous film before this was The Circus, which came out in 1928, and at that point, talkies were very much like a fad, whereas we're now in 1931, and yeah, talkies are very much the all the rave. Everybody's going to see them, and not silent films. But he felt that his character of the Tramp, who he plays in a lot of his films, would have probably not translated as well to sound cinema. So he stuck to his guns. He made a silent film, and as a result, we have City Lights. What is a spoiler-free review of yours of City Lights, Shane?
Yeah, I really, really love this. It's full of heart, full of humor, like slapstick humor, but also like humor that really does get you in the feels. The ending is brilliant. Like the romance does really work really well, and that boxing scene we'll get into it. But that boxing scene
Yeah,
is like
yeah,
one of the funniest and most inventive scenes that I've seen in a long, long, long time. Yeah, no, it's just everything about this film kind of really works. Like the music, I can't believe he composed it. No, I can't believe it because I knew that that's stuff he did anyway. But you know what I'm trying to say. Like it's
yeah, yeah,
incredible that he's such a multi hyphenate. He's working all these different levels. Yeah, the composition, directing, acting, like everything he did was brilliant. Especially like I don't have much of a kind of base to go off of, but he's really great in The Kid as well. Everything he does. So no, I really need to get into more Chaplin stuff, and yeah, I really really love this. What about you?
I think this is a very good jumping off point for Chaplin because it's kind of in the midpoint of his prime. Because in the 20s, obviously he was making silent films because everybody was making silent films, and a lot of his films are great. I actually haven't seen The Circus, weirdly enough. Need to watch that. But after this, then you have his 40s films, which you've got obviously The Great
Great
Dictator, which
dictator.
is incredible, and you've obviously Modern Times as well, which came after this, which is, in my opinion, his best film. And to get kind of this midpoint of this sort of act of defiance where he's like, no, actually, I'm still going to make this a silent film. I don't care what everyone says, is very Charlie Chaplin. He did not get on with some of the stars of this film. He actually took all the blame for that himself in his autobiography years and years later, saying, yeah, he basically needed this to be perfect to prove a point that he could
Yeah,
still succeed with a silent film. And yeah, it was a monster success.
yeah, he was a control freak. Like, he'd be the first person to say that, because I think it might be the actor who, there's a bit where he's getting paper straws like thrown at him, kind of thing, and one of the young actors would basically say, like, Chaplin would literally act their part, and then, like, in rehearsal he would literally do his part, run over, do their part, run back over, do his part, which isn't something you're supposed to do as a fellow actor, but obviously he is a director. Like, it's like
Yeah.
actual line readings is kind of frowned upon in the business, but he was just such a control freak that, like, he, and like you said, he really had something to prove. So I think that there's all that kind of backstory as well playing into this film.
Yeah, he also mainly did not get on with Virginia Cheryl, who plays the love interest in this film. And I think this film, we'll kind of talk about it, particularly with the ending, but this film really does shape the format for like basically all rom-coms today.
Yeah, I agree.
Basically, the film is about a guy who makes a woman believe that this is the reality when in fact this is the reality. And he basically has to try and juggle those two realities for the whole film whilst trying to pick up this girl. Where have you heard that before?
Yeah,
I
exactly.
mean, and then the ending as well. It's, again, we'll talk about it at the end. I think it's perfectly ambiguous, and it's an ending that you see at the end of so many rom coms. And this is more just like a straight up comedy. I don't know if I'd like call it an all out romantic comedy. I think it's
No,
just a
yeah,
comedy with some romance in it, but nonetheless, it is like so important to like today's rom coms. It's such a cherished movie, especially by directors. On the first ever Sight and Sound list, it was ranked the number 2 film of all time. Behind what, Shane? I'll let you have a guess.
What year did
The
this
list
list
was
come out?
1952.
Okay, right. I will say Citizen Kane.
No, I'll give you one more clue. It is a film we have covered on the podcast.
Oh, it is. Okay. Bicycle Thieves.
You are correct.
Yeah, I
Bicycle
remember.
Thieves
Actually, I
was,
remember now
yeah,
that you said that. Yeah, no, I remember the trivia a little bit.
yeah. So on the OG Sight and Sound list, it was Bicycle Thieves first, City Lights second. Orson Welles said this is his favorite film ever made, and Stanley Kubrick, in
Kubrick, yeah.
Stanley Kubrick fashion, said it's top 5. But yeah, this is a very much beloved film, and I reckon we get on into it. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm happy to that.
So, a statue is being unveiled in the city, a monument for peace and prosperity. It's got like a big tarp on it, and of course, when the tarp gets revealed, who is revealed but none other than the Tramp, Charlie Chaplin's probably most iconic character, it's safe to say, asleep on said statue. This We're similar to how in Billy Wilder's films that we cover, it's like we can't really do the humor justice because of how
Yeah.
well written it is. I feel like with like these films, it's going to be hard to actually do justice how funny these like physical gags are. But basically, he wakes up, everybody is appalled. He tries to climb down. He gives himself a wedgie on one of the swords that's on the statue. Everybody's still appalled. Then the national anthem goes off, so everybody just has to stop real quick. That was really funny. Even him, like being wedgied, he puts his hand on his heart for the anthem. But eventually, he does manage to get away from this somewhat embarrassment. And then that afternoon, as you said, the fella who was spitting spitballs is basically these two teenagers who just keep showing up on this corner throughout the film, basically just to slag the Tramp. And they basically point out how shabby he is. They like pull the fingers off his gloves and stuff, and they just point and laugh at him. They're arseholes. And he then we get another fairly iconic physical gag where he's stood in a shop window, and behind him this lift into the footpath goes down, and he doesn't see it, and he keeps walking back and forth whilst examining what's in the shop window. Yeah, very, very, very similar scene. And yeah, he basically keeps walking backwards and forwards and eventually does fall in. And yeah, as I said, it's hard to do the comedy justice. But yeah, just trust me, guys. These scenes are really funny.
Yeah, no, it's a perfect slapstick kind of comedy. Physical comedy, like everything is about the body language and the kind of the movement of his body and stuff. So
Yeah.
But yeah, so once he kind of comes back up through the contraption, he's then still walking on the street, and he comes across a girl selling flowers who he comes to realize is blind. She can't actually see
Yep.
him. So he she's after dropping a flower, and then he kind of picks it up, and she's like, okay, let me give it to you. So she pins it to his jacket as kind of a thank you to him.
Yeah.
And she thinks that he gets in a cab because she hears someone get into a cab, and then the cab drive
Yeah.
off. So she assumes it's him. And then she kind of realizes, he kind of is looking at her then, realizing that she's actually a bit like forlorn, that she would have liked to have talked to this man a bit more.
Yeah,
Which
because
again,
she.
furthers the yeah,
Yeah, she's like, you forgot your change, which
yeah,
obviously, when you see how he's dressed, it's like, oh, God, love him.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Because
So
he's too, he doesn't want to embarrass her or anything, so he
yeah,
doesn't want to like be like, oh, actually, I'm still here. Can I have my change back? So he just kind of like awkwardly shuffles away, and then shuffles back again. And yeah, as you said, she's quite forlorn. She starts cleaning the flower pots
yeah,
that
this is
she's selling the flowers in, and she just throws the water all over him, not knowing that he's there. So he kind of scurries off then.
yeah. So she goes home to her grandmother. She lives with her grandmother, and then she seems to kind of still hold a bit of a candle for this guy. She's kind of yearning for him. But
Yeah,
that night, then the man, so the tramp is down by the kind of the river, and he sees this man starts to tie kind of a rope around his neck, and he doesn't really know
yeah.
what's going on. But then we see another like a big ass brick,
Yeah,
and
it's like the most Looney Tunes suicide
yeah,
attempt ever, basically.
especially because we come on to later. There's another method he could have used, but anyway.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But anyway,
Literally, yeah.
so the tramp then realizes just in the nick of time that this guy is about to try and take his own life. So he kind of goes over to him and he's like, "You don't have to do this." Yeah, obviously not in dialogue, but you know he's trying to talk him off the ledge, so to speak.
Yeah,
The man ends up. Turns out, yeah, he does end up kind of getting talked down. So he's grateful to the tramp,
yeah,
but then shenanigans ensue, and it turns out that the rope is unwittingly gone around the tramp's neck then,
yeah,
so
yeah,
that
yeah.
when they pick up the rock or the big ass brick, the tramp then gets pulled into the water, and then this man helps him out of the water, but then no, they actually both get pulled back into the water, and then they
Yeah.
both get out of the water. This is whole long
It's
kind
the
of
most Looney Tunes looking thing ever, basically, because it's like this like mini boulder with like a big old rope
yeah,
tied around it, and then he ties it to himself to throw it in. And when he throws it into the river, Chaplin's acting where he just gets like launched into
yeah.
the river is so funny as well.
It's brilliant. Eventually, the two guys manage to get out of the water, and they're obviously relieved, and they're thankful to each other. But then a cop comes along, and they obviously don't want it to look, because obviously suicide is a crime. Like they
Yeah,
don't want it to seem that they were trying to take their own lives, because they were, well, one guy was, one guy wasn't, but. This guy, it turns out, has a bit of wealth, so he's like, right, come back to my mansion. I want to thank you for saving my life here tonight.
yeah, and so this guy is just called the millionaire or the eccentric millionaire. That's his name in the credits. So the millionaire goes back to his house, and the butler kind of lets us all know why he was attempting what he was attempting. His wife has left him, and he's devastated. So he toasts to his newfound friendship with the tramp, and he keeps accidentally pouring like entire bottles of alcohol down the tramp's trousers. But the two of them get quite drunk quite fast, so they don't even realize. And yeah, as you said, there could have been a simpler way of doing it, because he then pulls out a gun from his pocket, which he obviously had on him when trying to throw himself into a river with a giant boulder, and tries to shoot himself. But again, the tramp stops him, and yeah, the guy again just gets this new lease on life again, and he's like, right, James, the butler, James, get the Rolls Royce. We're hitting the town. So then they go to this restaurant, and again, just the amount of physical gags that happen in this restaurant is crazy. From the tramp nearly setting a woman's dress on fire because he discards a cigar by accident. To the iconic, the tramp is eating spaghetti and streamers all go off in the restaurant, and then he starts eating the streamer which is attached to the ceiling, and he's eating the spaghetti, and he just starts looking up, and he's confused. And there's another one where there's a big dance, and he keeps slipping on the floor, and he grabs a woman, and he just starts spinning around with her, and then her husband tries to fight him, so he starts dancing with the waiter, who's got like a giant tray of plates, and impressively the waiter only drops 2 plates, I think, which was quite impressive because there was about 15
Yeah,
plates
it's
on
a
that
lot of
tray. So
plates.
fair play to the waiter.
And this sound effects when he's kind of eating the spaghetti as well. It's like, like
Yeah,
you
yeah,
said,
yeah.
very, very Looney Tunes. No, it's everything about this. Just it's very slapstick. It's very like
Yeah,
obviously heightened
there's
and over
like
the top.
kazoos and sly
Yeah,
whistles and all that because
yeah,
it's a silent film, but it's got an accompanying audio
oh
track
yeah,
which is composed by
Chaplin.
Chaplin. He did like literally like hundreds of audio cues in his um, audio, which accommodates the film. So yeah, it's it's one of the few instances where we talk about a silent film and we know exactly what sounds we were both listening to because it's the only sound that accompanies this film.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So after kind of a heavy night on the town, then the man and the tramp get into the car the following morning and they're driving dangerously. Well, the man is driving dangerously, this eccentric millionaire. The tramp is like, you might want to slow down here, pal. So he's like, am I driving? So eventually the tramp
Yeah,
takes
it's
over the
so
wheel.
funny. Yeah,
That's brilliant. He's like, he doesn't even realize he's driving. Tramp takes over the wheel. So they get back to the man's big ass house. And the tramp is like, this is a pretty nice car you've got. And he's like, you want it? It's yours. It's your car. I'm gifting it to you. So obviously the tramp is pretty happy about that. And then the tramp then spots Flower Girl from before.
yeah,
So he runs into the man and he's like, oh, listen, can I have a buck to go and buy some flowers? And he gives him
yeah,
a big wad of cash. So he runs outside and he's like, he gives her $10. And he's like, no, you keep the change. I don't need it. You're better off having it.
yeah,
Then he shows her his car. Not a euphemism. He does show her his car, which obviously she can't see, but he's like, look, this is a pretty nice car. And then he escorts her home in this car. And he's like, can I see it again at some stage? She's like, yeah, whenever you want. So they're
yeah.
obviously growing a bit closer.
And there's loads of just little jokes as well. Like when he sat outside, a cat above him just knocks a plant pot and it smashes on his
Yeah,
head. There's loads of stuff like that. He sees on her windowsill that that's where she's growing the flowers that she's selling. So he stands on a barrel to get a smell of the flowers. And when one of the neighbours comes out, it gives him a fright and he falls off the barrel and accidentally just
a big barrel,
floods the neighbour's house.
yeah.
But yeah, there's so many little physical gags in here that are so great. But so yeah, he returns the Rolls Royce to the millionaire's house, and yeah, the millionaire awakens sober and hasn't a clue who he is. This is basically a spin off of an idea Chaplin had ages before, where he wanted to make a silent film about two millionaires who take a tramp from a dump. On like the most lavish, expensive night of his life, and then bring him back to the dump at the end, and he doesn't know if it was a dream or not. So he's expanding on that idea that he had many years before, where basically this guy has no idea who he is whenever he's sober. Whenever he's drunk, he recognizes him. He's like, "Oh,
Yeah.
my friend, my friend."
His best
But
friend, yeah.
whenever he's sober, hasn't a clue. So he hops in the Rolls Royce and drives off, leaving the tramp behind because he hasn't a Scooby Doo who he is whenever he is sober.
Yeah, so obviously he refuses entry to the tramp. So the tramp is walking along and he sees another rich guy who's smoking a cigar. And when he throws the cigar on the ground, he runs over and he picks up the cigar and he's fighting off someone else for it because obviously
Yeah.
he wants to give the illusion of being kind of rich. So when
But
he goes back
it's
there,
such a funny gag as well for the other guy who's like a homeless guy because
yeah,
a man has jumped out of a Rolls Royce to pick up a cigar off
yeah,
the footpath to rob it from him to get back into his Rolls Royce and drive off again. Like the man is so confused. It's so good.
yeah, I forgot actually he was driving the Rolls Royce. Yeah, he actually stole the Rolls Royce. Yeah.
Yeah.
Then he returns to the big house, obviously, of his friend, trying to seem important. And he's like, look, I'm smoking a cigar. Like, you have to let me in. The cigar proves that I'm rich. And man's like, no, get the fuck out of here. So then we cut back to Flower Girl, who is kind of recounting to her grandmother about this wealthy man. And then that afternoon, then the rich man is again drunk. And he comes out of like a liquor store, it would seem like maybe. And he then again, because he's drunk, he recognizes the tramp and he's like, oh, my friend, great to see you. So they go back home again.
Yeah, they go home to this big party where, this one, fairly short and sweet jokes here. He, quite early on into the party, accidentally swallows a really tiny whistle.
Yeah.
And he then gets the hiccups and he just keeps hiccuping and making a whistle sound. And the live music are trying to play and he keeps interrupting them with the whistles. So he goes outside and then he accidentally hails a taxi and the taxi man's like raging at him. And then all of a sudden he's just like surrounded by dogs because he just keeps whistling. So he goes back into the party just with this like flock of dogs behind him and everybody's absolutely appalled. And He then wakes up the following morning in the bed of that millionaire with him. And the millionaire is sober and hasn't a clue who he is again. And he is like, who is this man in my bed? He's also about to head off to Europe and just vague, just somewhere in Europe. It's all the same.
Yeah.
And
Don't really matter. It's just
it's all the same. So, again, he demands that the tramp is kicked out of his house once again, as he has no idea who he is. So, again, he returns back to the blind girl's home, and he discovers that she has a fever. He can hear it from outside her window. She has a fever, and she requires medical attention. And we also find out that they've been served their eviction letter. They need $22 to pay their rent, or they'll be evicted the following morning. So, safe to say that the bills are piling up. So our good friend the tramp decides to go out and find work so he can support this woman and her grandmother.
Yeah, obviously her grandmother as well is quite elderly, so it's not like she can just go out and get any old job to kind of pay the bills either.
She's also a flower salesperson. She's not quite a florist, I don't think. I don't know what the technical definition of a florist is. Do you have to have a shop to be a florist?
That's a good question. I would assume, yeah. That's my guess, is that you would have to be, yeah.
Let us know in the comments below. Do you have to have a shop to be a florist?
But yeah, the flower girl is quite excited because she's like to her grandmother, he's coming back today, he's coming. So yeah, the tramp eventually then finds work. And when he's at work, is again another funny gag where he's trying to wash up. So he's washing up with some soap, and then he accidentally puts the soap on the table, and then his boss comes along, or one of his co-workers comes along, and he starts eating the soap thinking it's like a block of cheese or a sandwich or something, and he's like, hang on, that's not right. So then he just chews his ass out. It's pretty funny.
Yeah, he starts roaring at him and bubbles start coming out.
Yeah,
that's it's brilliant.
Brilliant visual gag, yeah. So, he starts to find it difficult because he's obviously trying to keep up this act then as well. He wants the flower girl to still believe that he's this kind of rich guy who can kind of provide, etc., etc. So,
whilst the millionaire is in
Europe. Yeah,
it's harder for him to pretend to be the playboy philanthropist millionaire that he is in his head.
So he's trying to do his best, and then we get kind of another kind of, he's talking to the flower girl at a house, and we get another kind of really funny gag where she's rolling up like a ball of string, because obviously she's knitting or whatever, and some of it gets caught in his jacket. So when she's pulling it, it's like it's coming out of his jacket, and he's trying to then give it to her without kind of tipping.
It's a fun layer to the tramp character, because obviously it's the only shirt he owns, and yet he doesn't want to embarrass her, so he just lets her deconstruct the whole thing in front of him. He's too polite to actually say anything to her, even though it's obviously the only shirt he owns. It's one of them things. It's like with the cigar thing where he like knocks over the homeless guy. It's like he's got a rough edge to him, but then no, he's deep down he's a very good guy with good morals. The tramp.
Yeah, 100%. So then he goes back and he's obviously here at the kitchen table with the flower girl. And then he comes across the eviction notice, and he's like, oh crap. And he's like, all right, I'm going to pay this thing first thing in the morning. You're not going to have to worry. I'm going to take care of all this. So as he's coming out, then he goes back to work because his boss had told him, look, don't be late. Like, you've been late. He gets to late again. He's been late a few times over the period because his boss is like, that's the last time I'm going to let that happen. You're fired. Get the hell out of here. He's obviously trying to protest his innocence, but then when he's kind of walking away sheepishly, and some shifty looking guy on the kind of corner is looking around, and he's like, here, come here. And he's like, how do you want to make some easy money? And obviously the tramp needs some easy money, so he's like, yeah, okay, what have you got for me?
Yeah, and cue one of the best scenes stroke sequences. Oh my god, outside my window a magpie and a rabbit are in a fight. Sorry. It's just I've never seen that. The rabbits run away since, but jeez, that was intense. Cue one of the best and most iconic scenes in American silent film history. Basically, the entire boxing scene. Yes, the fight is the most iconic part, but I think the whole thing from start to finish is fantastic. Sequence, the whole thing is fantastic. Basically, the tramp and this guy who have agreed to split it 50-50 and not actually hurt each other are in the changing room. There's another guy in the background who's like he looks like an absolute monster. He's like sparring, shadow boxing, and this guy who he's with gets a letter, and it's just a very vague letter. So yeah, the cops are after you. Get out of there. So he just has a freaker. He gets up. He goes over to the promoter. He's like, I'm out of here. The cops are after me, and he leaves. So then the promoter finds this vaudevillain looking 1930s tough guy outside and asks him to come in and says, right, winner takes all, $50. And the guy's like, and he takes one look at the tramp. He's like, yes. Meanwhile, the big monster looking dude in the background is using a horseshoe and a lucky rabbit foot and everything. He's a very superstitious fighter, and he gets the tramp to come over and help him. And the rabbit, and the tramp even uses the rabbit foot himself on himself for good luck before the fight. And the guy goes out to fight. The tramp, meanwhile, then tries to convince this new guy to split it 50-50. And the guy's like, absolutely not. Winner takes all, because I'm going to batter you. Lo and behold, the guy who had the lucky rabbit foot gets carried back in. He almost looks like a corpse. He's been absolutely battered. And the fella who battered him comes back as well. And just starts irritating the guy who the tramp is fighting. So, like, basically, no luck, one punch knocks the guy who won the fight out. And the tramp is absolutely terrified.
It's so great. Everything is brilliant. So yeah, eventually they come to the moment where after much tongue and froing, after trying to get out of it, eventually he has to go make the ring walk. So it's like a bunch of like obviously a cut man and a coach and stuff that in the background that's just provided by the facility kind of thing. So they both make their entrances, and the tramp is like funny scene again where he enters the ropes and he immediately tries to get out, and he's brought back in. It's just everything about it so brilliant.
If you were a boxer, what would be your entrance theme?
Oh, that's cool. I think I'd go. Do you know that song from The Departed? Do you know Brendan Dolan's walk-on song from The Darts?
Yes.
I would go with that.
Nice.
Yeah, Sailing of the Boston.
Nice.
Yeah, I'd like that.
Dropkick Murphys, isn't it?
Yeah, Dropkick Murphys, that's the one.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
nice.
Yeah, that's.
Don't know what mine would be. I've no idea what mine would be. I'd probably, again, because realistically, darts players have better entrances than anything else.
Yeah.
I'd probably go for something that would like really get the crowd involved.
Do you know what Nathan Aspinall
so like
said?
it's done, but like Seven Nation Army, just because like it's such an easy way to get people to start cheering for you, and then like psychologically they're then cheering your name during the fight.
And then Mr. Brightside as well. I think Nathan Aspinall has a lot of crowd support just from that song alone. So yeah, there's a few.
Yeah.
So
I wonder by the time this comes out, the darts will be over. So it'd be interesting to see who wins. Yeah.
Well, Humphrey's got knocked out as we're recording.
I was watching it last night. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think Luke Littler has been favorite. Yeah. So
right, quick prediction. As of Monday the 30th of December, the morning of Monday, who's going to win the darts?
I think Luke Littler is going to do it. I think he's the best.
Do you reckon?
Yeah, I think so.
He is.
Especially
is
because
the best player. I have
Humphreys
a feeling MVG. I think he's going to come good.
Yeah. Peter Roy, I wonder, Peter Roy hasn't had a great year, but you can never rule him out. But has he peaked now at that Humphreys kind of performance? Anyway, we'll see.
Yeah. Littler's checkouts were poor, I felt.
Yeah, but he has
to begin with.
Yeah, they were, yeah. But like he did have that set where he just fucking
ridiculous. The 140 set.
But oh no, that's insane. Especially with Humphreys out, I think, because that would have been the semi-final if they'd both gotten there. And like at that point, it's like a 50-50.
Yeah.
I think he should make it to the final at this point, looking at the draw. So is it going to be Van Gerwen? If it's Van Gerwen, I could see it being a close. Yeah, but we'll see.
Anyway, the boxing scene in City Lights. Apologies, everyone. And basically the bell rings and it's incredible. So the two fighters get up, and for the entire first round, the Tramp just walks behind the ref as using him basically as a human shield without the ref knowing, and they basically just keep walking around the ref to a point where they just get dizzy, and the Tramp keeps getting like little jabs in and then clinching,
strategy,
and then jab and then clinch.
Yeah, the clinches.
I think Floyd may have adopted it, but he basically plays an incredible defensive boxing round against this. I don't know. I think he's just called
larger
the boxer.
Man,
larger man. Yeah, but the Tramp manages to survive the first round. He actually gets a couple of punches in and
Decent,
dazes the guy as well. But at the end of the round, your man gets one good one in on him as well.
I love the fact as
So
well.
yeah,
He just gets a few spears in there as well. It's just like a few
yeah,
Roman
yeah. He's
Reigns
just
edge spears.
he puts his two fists out and he just leaps across.
Yeah, it's
But
brilliant.
yeah, it's fantastic. The first round is so funny, and then the second round is great as well because they get up and he basically, it's similar to the first round, but it's choreographed so much better, I think, because basically everybody's just getting in each other's way now. He's trying to hide behind the ref, but there's points where he ends up like hiding behind his opponent, and the referee ends up like throwing digs and stuff.
It's
It's
great.
so funny, and as well, he goes over and pulls the bell on the. He pulls the string on the bell to try and end the round, but the referee goes over and pulls it again, and they basically just he defensively he's a fantastic boxer, I think.
He's fighting for his. It's just pure instinct. Like I don't think he's
it's
had
ring
any
IQ.
formal. Don't think he's had any formal training. It's just a life on the streets. Like he's lived his life on the streets, and so he just knows that survival instinct. It's so great. It's brilliant. But yeah, eventually like they're kind of throwing some haymakers at some point then, and they knock each other down a few times, and eventually there's like 10 counts. There's one moment where one of them is down for a 10 count and he gets back up and then the other one drops.
Yeah,
on a 10 count, gets back up and then the other one drops. It's just so great.
Very dusty roads of them.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
so then they go over to the side of the ring where the big string for the ring bell is, and the Tramp gets his like head caught in it. So your man punches him and he falls over and accidentally rings the bell. And then when he gets back up, it rings again. So your man keeps thinking that the round's ending and starting again. So he keeps turning around, knocking him out, turning around. Oh,
So great.
knocking him out, turning around. Knocking him out and turning around over and over again. It's so funny.
Yeah, eventually. So after much shenanigans, eventually, I was like, oh, the Tramp is actually going to do this. He's going to pull it off. Eventually, he does get a big clock. He just gets clocked and he's down and he's out for the 10
just
count. And
knocked out.
there was one moment where he obviously imagined the flower girl kind of geeing him up and giving him some inspiration. So that kind of got him through the tougher moments. But yeah, it wasn't to be in the end. So that $50, that would have been also handy. It's gone at a puff of dust.
Yeah, so he, after regaining consciousness in the locker room, he wanders the streets until on a returning trip from Europe. The millionaire finds him and he's pissed. So he recognizes him and he says, "Oh, my friend, come back with me." So they go back to the millionaire's house, and as they get there, we see that there's two people who are breaking into the house who then hide behind the curtains. So when they go in, they are totally oblivious that these people are here, but one of the guys has actually left their gun in the room. The Tramp finds it, so the guy who owns the gun tries to sneak up behind him, and then all of a sudden the millionaire tries to kill himself again. He pulls out his own gun, and then all sorts of shenanigans happen where eventually the two thieves are just like, "Oh, fuck this," and they both come out and they just bonk the millionaire on the head and knock him out cold, and then do a runner. This is all after the millionaire has agreed to give
He's giving him
the Tramp $1,000 to pay this $22 fee. We should have mentioned as well earlier that when he was reading the eviction letter to the blind girl, he also read in the newspaper that this Austrian doctor in Vienna has found a cure for blindness. This is really expensive surgery that you can get, but that's just a pipe dream at the time. But yeah, with this money, obviously, he has every intention of paying for that too. But when these lads knock your man out and do a runner, the Tramp tries to chase after them, and as he tries to chase after them, the butler only then arrives and sees the Tramp running out of the sitting room whilst your man is unconscious on the floor. He shouts, and a policeman outside hears this and stops the Tramp and pulls him back in, and basically they start questioning the Tramp. Your man's knocked out. He has the thieves' gun on him. He has £1,000 in cash, even though he's dressed the way he is. So yeah, they take one look at him and they're like, "There's no way this man willingly gave this to you. You stole from him." And the guy wakes up, and yeah, he's like, "I have no idea who this guy is."
Yeah, because he's sobered
this
up.
knock on the head has sobered him up.
If that's all it took, like all of a sudden Dublin City would be a very different place. But yeah, no, eventually the man's like, "I didn't give you that money, pal." So Trump is obviously desperately trying to plead his innocence, and then he just does a runner, which makes him look more guilty, I'll be honest. But he does do a runner. He goes straight to the flower girl's place, and then he's like, "Look, I'm gonna give you this money." She obviously doesn't realise that it's not stolen money, but it kind of is at this point. Like, it wasn't stolen money, but now it is. she doesn't realize that stolen money, and then he's like, right, I'm gonna have to go away for a while because he knows he's gonna have the cops after him. He's like, look, I'm gonna have to go away for
Yeah.
a while, but I will be back. He just goes full Arnie in the Terminator. I'll be back. So
Yes.
yeah, he wants to kind of get back and rekindle whatever kind of thing is going on here.
Yeah, he goes back and wanders the streets where those two teens start slagging him again, and he gets arrested and he gets brought to prison. And later that year, he gets out of prison, and it's safe to say that he is he's down on his luck. And as he's roaming the streets, it turns out that this girl is now definitely a florist because she has a shop. She could see. A really like tall, handsome, wealthy gentleman comes in, and she thinks it might be the Tramp character, but it's not. So she's quite disappointed, and basically she's relying on recognizing the voice of the person because she couldn't see the person at the time, obviously. So she knows it's not him because of the voice. But yeah, the Tramp is wandering the streets, and eventually, after again getting slagged by those bastard teenagers, he stumbles across a tiny little flower similar to the flower that she gave him at the start, and he goes out and he picks it up and he turns around, and in some of the best acting of maybe Chaplin's entire career, he turns around and he sees her in the window, and his face just absolutely lights up, and she's kind of laughing at the whole ordeal with him and the teenagers because it's just quite slapstick, but she does seem to be a nice person whenever he turns around, because she offers him like an actual nice flower. Like, this was obviously something that was just discarded. So she offers him a small flower. He tries to run away because obviously she doesn't recognize him and he has not said a word yet. But she catches up to him just outside the shop and stops him to give him the flower, and he accepts. And when she puts the flower in his hand, she recognizes the feel of his hand, and she says, "Is it really?" And he's like, "Yeah." And he holds the little flower up, and in the perfect ending, the most ambiguous ending, she says, "I can see now." And that's it. He just smiles to himself while smelling that little flower, and it ends. There's no over the top kiss. There's no, "Oh, I love you," or "Oh, I found you." It's just, "Oh, I can see now." And he just smiles into his flower, which he's absolutely delighted with.
Yeah.
And that is City Lights. Shane, what do you reckon? City Lights, is it any good?
Yeah, it's pretty good. Pretty good. No, it's really, really lovely film. Very like couldn't be more slapstick, really. I say that like I'm sure that there might be more slapstick Charlie Chaplin films, but like I don't think there's a scene goes by where there's not like dozens of slapstick moments. But they all work really well in telling you who the Tramp is and telling you what he wants to try and achieve. Like, he wants to help this girl. The romance does work really well for me, but the boxing scene is like genuinely amazing, iconic stuff. Yeah, I love this. I gave it 4 stars out of 5. And yeah, I absolutely want to get into more Chaplin stuff. So this is giving me a good reason to do that. What about you?
Yeah, I also gave it 4 stars out of 5. I am also gonna kind of tick off the rest of the big Chaplin films I want to watch this year. I'm gonna watch Limelight, I'll watch The Gold Rush, and I'll watch The Circus, and then I reckon I am fairly content with what I've seen from Chaplin so far. But yeah, this is a rewatch for me. I watched it for the first time, I was gonna say last year, but this is coming out in 2025. So I watched it 2 years ago in 2023, at the end of 2023, and I absolutely loved it first time, and I loved it again. It's still great on a rewatch. Something about physical comedy, I feel like these films are actually very rewatchable if they're done right, because like
Yeah.
the the plot is well written, don't get me wrong, but it is the physical humor that obviously carries the film, and it's never gonna not be funny, even if you know how it's gonna go. It's still funny, the second time or the third time or whatever. So yeah, I really liked it. If you have seen it before, I would urge you to rewatch it because it'll still be great. And yeah, as I said a billion times, I said it on TikTok as well. I think this is the perfect place to start Charlie Chaplin. I think this is the best jumping off point. And then you can kind of decide, like, oh, do I want to go with his grander, bigger films then with Modern Times and The Great Dictator, or do I want to really delve into the low key Tramp character slapstick films
I think I'm
which
gonna
like, have a lot of heart, like A Dog's Life and The Kid.
yeah. Sorry to cut across. I think I'm gonna go with because I've seen the kid, but I think I'm gonna stick with his kind of low, like his earlier stuff is more like the Trump
A
stuff.
Dog's Life
So
is good. It's good.
I'm gonna stick with that because I want to get a feel for kind of like who he was, and then I think I'm gonna finish then, not finish, but I think I'm gonna leave the bigger stuff, Modern Times, The Great Dictator, etc., etc. I'm gonna leave those for the end. So I have a couple of directors I want to get through first, that I'm trying to get through. But once I've them out of the way, I want to really delve into Charlie Chaplin.
Yeah, and that was City Lights. We are absolutely flush for time, and I know you have seen far more films than me recently.
Yeah.
So let me just pull up. Let's see how many films have I watched since we filmed the Nosferatu episode. I watched Office Space, which is absolutely hilarious. It has like unironically one of the best slow mo scenes ever. Have you seen Office Space?
No, but I've heard very
Oh,
good
it
things.
is so funny. And yeah, the scene with the fax machine, everyone knows it when they see it, is absolutely hilarious. And yeah, I also watched Winchester 73, a incredible western starring Jimmy Stewart. I was working on doing a top 12 Jimmy Stewart films everyone should see. But yeah, as I said to Shane, I think before we were rolling, I've just been up to my eyes with work. I have not had a chance to watch any movies, unfortunately. So that video will come probably sooner rather than later. But I still have like two or three films I want to see before I really put that out. But Winchester 73 is so good. I believe it's just been added to the Criterion Collection as well. So it's going to get a 4K release early 2025 from Criterion, which will be cool. It's just really interesting. It's a film that basically follows a gun called the Winchester 73, and basically the perils of owning said gun. It's not cursed or anything, but let's just say anyone who gets their hands on this gun, quite quickly their life becomes a lot more active, shall we say.
It's like the
Also,
Elder Wand.
it is literally it is like the Elder Wand. It's the gun that won the Civil War. So everybody wants it. And as soon as someone sees it, it's like, oh, that is what I'm gonna make my life's mission for the next day or two. I'm gonna get that gun. It also has a really young Tony Curtis who
Nice.
at one point does get to hold the gun. Good for you, Tony. He is like a child in this film. He looks so young in it. But yeah, they are the two films that I have seen since the Nosferatu episode. How about you?
I'll speed through a few of them. Speaking of Tony Curtis, I don't know why, but I had a real like hankering to rewatch some like a hot recently, and it's like, oh, I hope somewhere showing it. Lo and behold, BBC I think 2 on Christmas Day. They were showing it in the middle of the day, so I was like, oh, happy days. So I recorded that and I watched that. What else? Little Women, Greg Earwick's Little Women. I rewatched that as well.
Oh, so good.
Amazing.
Perfect. Literal perfect movie.
Genuinely, I'll agree with you. It's incredible. Absolutely adore that film. The Order, Justin Kurzel's recent film from 2024. That's pretty good. Shop Around the Corner, I really liked.
Yeah, class.
Christmas in Connecticut was a bit of a letdown, I'll be honest. It's fine, but
Right.
I was expecting more. School of Rock, probably my favourite film of all time, to be honest. I love that film, so I'll rewatch that. Kneecap, I finally got around to watching Kneecap.
Oh, it's so good.
So funny, so good, so good.
Yeah.
The Muppet Christmas Carol, obviously a few Christmas films. The Muppet Christmas Carol rewatch. Red Rooms is a twisted, fucked up thriller from last year, from 2024. Yeah, that was on my watch list for a while, and I don't think it was showing anywhere that any of my local cinemas. So eventually I ended up watching it online over the Christmas. But yeah, it's about the opposite of a Christmas film as you can get, because it's pretty fucked up. Other than that, yeah, just kind of what else? Not really anything else that I want to mention, but that are worth mentioning. But yeah, and a few, obviously catched up on a few rewatches and stuff that I really wanted at that time of year.
Nice. And yeah, so by the time this comes out, I reckon we will have either filmed or possibly even released two pretty fun videos. That is us reacting to our Letterboxd Wrapped. I think Letterboxd Wrapped comes out on January 6th.
Right.
So we'll do that. And as well, obviously, the Golden Hour Film Podcast Awards for 2024 should be out relatively soon. That'll just be a bit of crack. I've had a sneaky peek at the results so far, and yeah, interesting stuff. And that's all I'm gonna say about that. Next week, we are covering a Universal monster movie. We are covering Lon Chaney Jr. as the Wolfman, a underrated gem in my opinion. You haven't seen it, have you?
No, no, we're covering this.
Yeah,
We
it
should
is
say
a
in aid of the
gem.
yeah, it's a remake from Lee Winnell, who remade The Invisible Man a few years ago. Very, very different than the original adaptation, so I'm expecting a very different film. But again, it's obviously thematically we're talking about the same thing here. So that's the reason, obviously, that we're doing that.
And of course, Claude Rains.
Yeah, our boy Claude Rains.
Yeah, we do
Can
love
do-
Claude Rains.
Can do no wrong.
And yeah, that is next week's episode. That is our 1940s film that we'll be covering in the Golden Hour Film Podcast through the years. And I reckon that'll probably do us for this week. And yeah, make sure to follow us on Instagram, follow us on TikTok. We have Twitter. Feel free to listen to us on Spotify or wherever, just not Apple Music. And yeah, that is the Golden Hour Film Podcast, episode 38, I believe, which is crazy. And yeah, thank you very much. I'll see you all next week for The Wolfman. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, everyone. See you next week.
I have been Harry Bailey.
I've been Shane White.
And we'll see you then. Thank you.